And here's the interesting thing about your position with regard to your conversion to Islam and becoming a Muslim. Muslims, as you know, have been ranting about you for the last few days and utterly betraying them because you've decided to associate yourself with Tommy Robinson, who is a far-right thug, who has been spewing utter horrible Islamophobic anti-Muslim rhetoric all week, and yet you have not distanced yourself from him. So the Muslim community in the UK now view you as part of the enemy too. You know that. How do you feel about that?
Well, I pray for my brothers, and I think the information I've seen and the replies I've seen have not been hateful from the Islamic community. Saying to Tommy Robinson that I will debate him on issues, I don't think is failing to distance myself. I debate you all the time, Pierce, and we disagree on basically everything. I'm happy to argue with Tommy because we disagree on so many different points of view, and I think it's very important that we have conversation. The reason these riots are happening in the first place is because everybody's afraid to talk. I'm prepared to sit down with somebody I don't like and don't agree with.
That's complete nonsense.
I'm prepared to talk to Tommy.
That's nonsense. The reason the riots are happening is people like you and Tommy Robinson have been spewing utter disinformation, which has led people to believe that the person that perpetrated these despicable crimes was an illegal Muslim migrant who was on the MI6 terror watch list.
Firstly,
right. I'm saying you and Tommy Robinson,
let's be careful.
between you, okay. I'm saying between you,
but
you
where's
put
the
out
logic
there
failure?
a completely false impression.
There's a logic failure of lumping me in with somebody who I don't agree with and saying, oh, you and him said X.
So do you denounce Tommy Robinson?
Tommy Robinson and I disagree on a whole bunch of issues. And I think he's completely incorrect on his view of Islam. We're not playing this game of constant denouncing.
Do you denounce him for inciting the rioting?
I denounce him for everything bad he said about Islam. He's absolutely incorrect, and I cannot be his friend or support him for that reason.
For inciting the rioting by telling people it was a
it.
Muslim illegal
I'm not going to
migrant.
say it's not for me. It's not for me to decide who has incited the rioting, and it's not for you to decide.
Well, you can't denounce that.
A court denounce what? I'm not going to sit here and say who's in charge of the riots because nobody knows.
Telling people he was an illegal Muslim.
My view on why the riots happened is because I believe that the native population, the Christian population of the UK, feels like their voice is not heard. I think if their voice was heard and they had correct political
that's not why the riots happened.
Things would not be happening.
That's not why the riots happened. The riots happened. The riots happened because people like
things are written on social media all day, every day.
No, Andrew.
And there's no riots.
No, Andrew.
People finally had enough. After endless attacks where they felt like they did not get a voice anymore politically. When you don't have a political avenue, you're going to choose a violent one. I think Tommy is wrong about Israel, just like you were, because you were supporting the genocide in Gaza, and I stood up against you for that. I think Tommy's wrong on a whole bunch of issues.
I wasn't supporting any genocide in Gaza.
However, he has a voice. Yes, you were. He has a voice, and I'm prepared to sit here and debate with him, and I'm prepared to correct him on the things he's wrong about. And for you to sit and then you support a genocide, and you're going to say I'm a bad person for saying that little girls shouldn't get stabbed by people who don't belong in the UK in the first place. I don't care if you're a Muslim, I don't care if you're a Christian, black or white.
Okay.
Nobody should be turning up into the country without a passport.
I'm going to
Absolutely nobody.
I'm going to respond by saying this. I believe that successive Labour and Conservative governments have completely lost control of immigration to our country, both legal and illegal. They all promised tens of thousands net migration. It's never happened. We now had nearly 1 million people come in last year, net 700, 800,000, whatever it is, most of them legally, completely outrageously large number, which is unsustainable for a country as small as the United Kingdom. We've also got a big issue with, although a much smaller issue, I would argue, with the illegal people coming in on these boats and some of them dying in the process, which is an appalling human tragedy perpetrated by evil traffickers. And this has to be dealt with. So on that, I completely agree. My issue with what's happened in the last week is that we've got Elon Musk talking about there now is going to be an inevitable civil war in the United Kingdom. And I've noticed what he hasn't done. I've called him out on this today. In his series of attacks on Keir Starmer, the new British Prime Minister, he has tried to paint a picture that there is one rule of policing the right-wing thugs who've been attacking mosques.
Did he
Well,
try?
they have, as you know, and another rule for Muslims walking around armed to the teeth looking for white people to attack. I think both are completely reprehensible, and I'm easily able to say that. The problem is Elon Musk has said nothing condemnatory about the initial rioting, which has continued to go on, which has been anti-Muslim and directly targeting mosques and Muslims for something that they had nothing to do with, which was the killing of these children. And I have a massive problem with that.
Yeah.
And you have boxed yourself, if you don't mind me
So do
saying.
I, sir.
Well, hang on.
So do I,
hang
sir.
on. Hang on. You have boxed yourself into a position now where your own Muslim community in the UK are enraged with you because they believe you are siding with Tommy Robinson, who is leading a far-right series of attacks on Muslims and mosques and is being blatantly Islamophobic in the process. And you know that. And so what do you say to the Muslim community who believe that's what you're doing?
Well, if there's a small contingent of the Muslim community which believe that, I've yet to see so much vitriol like you're pretending exists. But I want to make it very clear. I want to make it very clear, Piers. I want to make it very clear here. I will answer the question. I am an Islamic revert, and I do not want to talk scripture because there's people more qualified than I, but I'll make it clear. I lead with love in my heart. The Islam I was taught was one of peace and tolerance. There's not a single person alive who can force me to take sides or to hate anybody else. And I don't care what kind of Islamic person you are, to come along and tell me I should hate somebody else because of Islam is not the kind of Islam I prescribe to. I have half of my family which is Christian, half of my family which is Muslim. I'm half black, I'm half white. I do not want either sides of my family to face any kind of violence on the streets. I'm the person who's been calling for peace. You're reading out the odd tweet here and there. Why don't you read out the 30 tweets I tweeted explaining that we need peace on the streets and we need to restore some form of democratic representation to the House of Parliament. You only choose and lie by omission and try and pretend there's a problem where there's not. I love all of my Islamic brothers, and I also love every Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu. I'm a person who has no hate in his heart, and if anybody has a problem with me personally, I'm happy to speak to them about it. But all in all, I've not seen this hate that you're pretending exists. I've actually seen unlimited support.
People?
I've actually seen huge support from the Islamic community. That's what I've seen, because they understand that in Islam we teach each other to live and love with peace. We're not sitting here trying to hurt each other. And actually, one more thing.
Stop talking for a moment.
I will say to the Muslim brothers, I will say this. We need to show the world that we are not the hateful ideology they think we are. We need to show the world that we believe in God and we trust God and that we're going to stand up for our beliefs and we're not going to allow ourselves to be watered down or walked all over. But we also need to understand that there's this terrible perception of us that has been painted by the Western media machine. And I like to live with love. When I tell people I'm a Muslim, I see fear in some people's eyes. And I spend a lot of time trying to talk that fear out of them. There's love in my heart. There's nothing but love in my heart for everybody.
Yeah, you keep saying there's so much love in your heart.
I will pray.
Fine. There's a lot of love in your heart, but not, it appears, when it comes to... Yeah, but your first response to the murders of these children was to issue a video in which you spew complete nonsense about the perpetrator being an illegal migrant to this country. That does not fill people with love. It makes them hate all illegal immigrants to this country, as well you know. On August the 4th, you retweeted the notorious white supremacist Nick Fuentes on the subject of the riots. And you said this, he said this, Fuentes, it's clear that not only are these protests being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media, but the mayhem will also catalyst a major crackdown on speech and persecution of political right in the UK. So it's Zionist plants are fueling this, apparently. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the point he was trying to make, and this is the meta point, which is very important, is that fighting each other is never going to work. When you have people who live on the same street,
that wasn't the point he made.
Fighting each other,
the point he made is that Zionist plants,
Can I finish?
Jewish people,
May I finish,
Jewish
Piers?
people on social media were amplifying the riots. You retweeted it, so presumably you agree with him.
Well, Tommy and you do work for the same people, so that is interesting that you want to try and bring this point up. However, let me make this clear.
You literally retweeted
when you have people on the same street,
who is a disgusting white supremacist who spews anti-Semitic crap morning, noon, and night. You retweeted him. Do you agree with him when he said it's clear these protests are being amplified and directed by Zionist plants on social media? Do you agree with that?
Well, the point I agree with, if you will let me finish my answer. When you have white people and brown people on the same street,
do you agree with Zionist plants?
I'm trying to finish. I'm trying to answer the question. When you have black people, brown people, white people on the same street who are all upset with
But
the
not
government
Jewish
because the
people.
government has betrayed them, and I think everybody agrees that, and they're fighting against each other, this will only result in more government crackdowns and more power against everybody. Brown people and white people, Muslims and
Do you
Christians,
think it was
everybody will
Zionist
suffer
plans?
from more totalitarianism from the government. Keir Starmer stood up and said, I'm going to be totalitarian and I'm going to use this
You're
as
just
an excuse to
distracting.
take
You're
away more of
answering
your
a
rights
different
and more of your
question.
liberties and take away your ability to ever answer any question and have a true point of view,
Fine.
or to ever
Andrew,
assemble and make it clear that you're
why
unhappy
aren't
about
you
certain
answering
things.
my question?
What Nick was right about was the result of all of this senseless violence, which is going to be a government crackdown and everyone's going to lose their rights. He was right about that, and that's why it's so important that all my Muslim brothers understand that violence is not the answer, and all of the Christians also who are upset and worried understand violence is not the answer, and that we have more in common with each other than we do these elites who are selling us out, and
what
those
about
are the people who are
okay.
deciding that these boats
Stop
can
talking
arrive on
for
the
a
border.
moment. I'm just going to try
The
one more
average
time.
Muslim man on the street doesn't want boats arriving of undocumented migrants either. You can't turn up in the United Arab Emirates without a passport. You can't go to Qatar without a passport.
Well,
you can't go to
nobody wants
Bahrain
it.
without a passport. Only in the
Nobody
UK.
wants
Only
it.
in the UK do we have a country so insane that we have no border. We don't
Nobody
know
wants
who's
it.
there. Crimes through the roof. Nobody's safe on the streets anymore. And then when you point these things out, somehow you're some kind of racist and bad person. This
No,
is not
you didn't, but that's
anti-Islamic
the
to say you
problem.
need a passport to come to the UK.
But that's the problem.
In the
You see,
United
you
Arab
didn't-
Emirates, you need a passport. They have the strictest immigration
Fine.
in the world.